John Wayne's Rooster Cogburn has 20 hidden secrets from the 1975 Western that brought together two Hollywood legends in their only film together, and nearly didn't happen at all. Wayne reprised his Oscar-winning role as the one-eyed Marshal 6 years after Henry Hathaway's True Grit, paired with Katharine Hepburn in what should have been a guaranteed hit, yet the film became a fascinating footnote in cinema history filled with behind-the-scenes drama, health crises, political tensions, and production secrets that remained buried for decades. You might remember seeing this film in theaters back in '75, or catching it on television over the years, and you probably think you know everything about it. The real story of how Rooster Cogburn got made, and why it turned out the way it did, is far more interesting than what ended up on screen. From secret screenwriters to surviving movie sets you can still visit today at Smith Rock State Park. From Wayne's oxygen mask to Hepburn's surprising political evolution, the production was as dramatic as any shootout in the script. Let's dive into the hidden history of John Wayne's only sequel. Fact number 1. Both stars were born in May 1907, making them exactly 67 years old during filming. Here's something that puts the entire production in perspective. John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn weren't just around the same age, they were born in the same month of the same year. Wayne arrived on May 26, 1907, while Hepburn came into the world on May 12, making her exactly 2 weeks older than Duke. When cameras rolled in September 1974, both stars were 67 years old, and that's not actors playing older characters or using makeup to age themselves. These were genuine Hollywood legends from the Golden Age, performing their own stunts and riding horses in the Deschutes National Forest wilderness at an age when most people are retired. The parallel timing of their lives makes their pairing even more remarkable, given they'd both been working in Hollywood since the early 1930s and both became icons in their own right. Wayne embodied the ultimate Western hero, while Hepburn represented the quintessential independent woman. Yet despite parallel careers spanning over 4 decades, despite both working for the same studios at times, despite being exactly the same age, they had never appeared in a film together until 1975. This wasn't an accident. There were very specific reasons why it took until they were both pushing 70 for this collaboration to happen. Fact number 2. Rooster Cogburn was John Wayne's only sequel in his entire 50-plus-year career. John Wayne fans know the Duke appeared in over 170 films during his career, playing cavalry officers, cowboys, pilots, detectives, and every type of hero imaginable. Here's what's truly remarkable. In all those decades, in all those films, Wayne only reprised a character once. Just once. Marshal Rooster Cogburn. Think about all the successful Wayne films that could have generated sequels. The Searchers, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Rio Bravo, Red River, Stagecoach, The Quiet Man. Hollywood loves sequels, especially when they've got a proven formula. Yet Wayne always moved on to something new. Why did he return to Rooster Cogburn? The answer comes down to one thing. This was the role that finally won him an Academy Award. After decades of being overlooked by the Academy, after being nominated only once before for Sands of Iwo Jima back in '49, Wayne took home the Oscar for Best Actor in 1970 when he was 62 years old. His only competitive Oscar win for bringing Charles Portis's character to life under Henry Hathaway's direction. That character meant something to Wayne, because it represented the Academy's acknowledgement of his lifetime of work. When producer Hal Wallace came to him with a script for a sequel, Wayne said yes, something he'd never done before and would never do again. Fact number 3. Katharine Hepburn had previously refused to work with John Wayne in the 1950s due to his support of the House Un-American Activities Committee. That collaboration between Wayne and Hepburn in '75 almost happened 20 years earlier, and Hepburn said no. Back in the early 1950s, Wayne was offered the lead in Hondo, and Universal Studios wanted Hepburn for the female role, which she turned down flat. The reason was politics. John Wayne had been a vocal supporter of the House Un-American Activities Committee, the group responsible for the Hollywood blacklist during the Red Scare, and he'd cooperated with the committee's investigations into supposed communist influence in the film industry. Hepburn held completely opposite political views. She was a liberal, an independent thinker, and she despised what the blacklist did to her friends and colleagues in Hollywood. Working with Wayne during that period would have felt like a betrayal of her principles. By 1974, something had changed. The blacklist era was long over. Both Wayne and Hepburn had mellowed with age, and Hepburn had developed a more nuanced view. She told Time magazine during production, "I decided to grab him before it was too late for me or for him." What made her change her mind? She'd come to respect Wayne's integrity as an actor and as a person, even if she disagreed with his politics, and she saw something in him that reminded her of Spencer Tracy, her longtime love and frequent co-star. That was the highest compliment Hepburn could give anyone. Fact number 4. The screenplay was written by Martha Hyer under the pseudonym Martin Julian because she was married to the producer. Here's a Hollywood secret that stayed hidden for years. Look at the credits for Rooster Cogburn and you'll see the screenplay attributed to someone named Martin Julian, which sounds like a man's name. That was the point. Martin Julian was actually Martha Hyer, an actress who'd been nominated for an Oscar herself for Some Came Running back in '59, and who happened to be married to Hal Wallis, the legendary producer making Rooster Cogburn. To avoid accusations of nepotism, of giving his wife a job she didn't deserve, Wallis insisted she use a male pseudonym. She took on the job of crafting a Western that would showcase both Wayne and Hepburn, and deliberately structured it to echo their most famous roles. The script was intentionally designed to remind audiences of True Grit and The African Queen, giving both stars familiar territory, while bringing them together for the first time. The pseudonym fooled people for years. Film historians eventually figured it out, but casual viewers had no idea that the tough-talking Western dialogue was written by a woman, and by the producer's wife, no less. Fact number 5. John Wayne wore an oxygen mask on set because he had only one lung and struggled with the altitude. Wayne's health profoundly affected this production. What many younger viewers don't know is that John Wayne had survived lung cancer a decade before making Rooster Cogburn. Doctors removed Wayne's entire left lung and several ribs in 1964 because of cancer caused by his heavy smoking, and he'd been a chain smoker for decades. Wayne was actually the person who popularized calling cancer the Big C because he refused to use the word cancer itself when discussing his illness publicly. The good news was that after 5 years of monitoring, Wayne was declared cancer-free in '69, and he'd beaten it. Beating cancer doesn't mean there aren't consequences, and Wayne spent the rest of his life functioning with only one lung. Production was based in Bend, Oregon, and much of the filming took place in the Deschutes National Forest at altitude, which for a man with one lung made the thinner air extremely difficult to breathe. Crew members regularly saw Wayne using an oxygen mask between takes, struggling to catch his breath. Wayne had contracted pneumonia earlier that year while filming Brannigan in London, and for a 66-year-old man with one lung, pneumonia is potentially fatal. He'd survived it, but the illness had weakened him even further. A severe coughing fit during that illness had also damaged one of his heart valves, though that injury wouldn't be discovered until he needed emergency open-heart surgery in '78. When you watch Rooster Cogburn, you're watching a man who was genuinely struggling to breathe, genuinely fighting his body's limitations, genuinely pushing through pain to deliver his performance. That wasn't acting. That was John Wayne refusing to quit. Fact number 6. Wayne's iconic eye patch conveniently hid a facial injury he sustained playing golf with his daughter during filming. Wayne's physical challenges during production took an ironic twist when the eye patch that Rooster Cogburn wears ended up serving a very practical purpose that had nothing to do with the script. Wayne took some time off during production to play golf with his young daughter, which was supposed to be relaxation and a break from the demands of filming. Wayne injured himself instead, sustaining some kind of facial injury during the golf outing, though the details aren't entirely clear. Most films would shut down when the lead actor's face is injured, but Rooster Cogburn wears an eye patch over his left eye, and that patch conveniently covered the injury. Production continued without interruption, and without the audience ever knowing that Duke was hurt. And if that fact surprised you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because we've got plenty more hidden Hollywood stories coming your way. Classic Western fans, this channel is for you. Wayne could have been injured anywhere on his face, but the damage happened to be in a spot that the costume naturally concealed. The show went on, and decades later, almost nobody knew it had happened. Fact number 7. Richard Farnsworth played Rooster's deputy in the opening sequence, but all his scenes were completely cut from the final film. Richard Farnsworth had been working in Hollywood as a stuntman since the '30s, and had started getting small acting roles in the early '70s. For Rooster Cogburn, he was cast as the deputy who works with Marshall Cogburn in the opening sequence. Farnsworth filmed his scenes, worked with John Wayne, delivered his lines, and when director Stuart Millar and editor Robert Swink put the final cut together, every single one of Farnsworth's scenes ended up on the cutting room floor. This must have been disappointing for Farnsworth, but he didn't let it stop him. He kept working, kept taking small roles, and eventually broke through as a leading man. 1999 rolled around, and at age 79 he starred in The Straight Story, directed by David Lynch, and that performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. The actor whose scenes were completely cut from Rooster Cogburn eventually became an Oscar nominee himself. Hollywood has a way of evening things out over time. Fact number 8. Stuart Millar appeared in both True Grit and Rooster Cogburn, but played two completely different characters. You might have noticed a familiar face in the supporting cast if you've seen both True Grit and Rooster Cogburn. Stuart Millar, one of the great character actors of the Western genre, appeared in both films playing two entirely different characters. True Grit had Martin playing Colonel Stonehill, the horse trader who haggles with young Mattie Ross, originally played by Kim Darby in Henry Hathaway's film at the beginning of the story, and it's a memorable role where Martin brings that distinctive voice and manner to the wheeler-dealer character. Rooster Cogburn cast Martin as Shanghai McCoy, one of the members of Eula Goodnight's missionary group. Completely different character, completely different context, same actor. This kind of thing happened occasionally in classic Hollywood, especially with character actors who had distinctive looks, and the filmmakers were counting on audiences either not noticing or not caring that the same supporting player appeared in both films. For the most part, they were right, since most viewers focused on Wayne and Hepburn rather than on whether the character actors were consistent between films. Stuart Millar got to work with Duke twice in the same character's story, even if he was playing different people. Fact number 9. The Kate's Saloon set from the film still exists at Smith Rock State Park and now houses a rock climbing guide service. Rooster Cogburn left a lasting mark on Oregon, and this is where the filming locations get interesting. Most movie sets get torn down after filming wraps, since the buildings are facades not meant to last. But one of the sets from Rooster Cogburn is still standing today, 50 years later. Smith Rock State Park in Terrebonne, Oregon, was used for several scenes involving the outlaws and villains in the film, and the production built a set there called Kate's Saloon for the movie. When filming ended, the building was left standing instead of being demolished. That same structure houses Rockhard and Smith Rock climbing guides today, a business that takes advantage of the area's spectacular rock formations. Visit Smith Rock State Park and you can see the actual building that appeared in a John Wayne Western, walk through the same doors, stand where the cameras stood. Imagine Wayne and the other actors working there in the fall of '74. For fans of classic Westerns who want to make a pilgrimage, this is one of the few places where you can touch a piece of film history that's still standing and still in use. The building survived because it was solidly constructed and because somebody recognized its value beyond its original purpose. Smith Rock State Park later hosted another film production, Kevin Costner's The Postman in '97, and the location's dramatic scenery has made it a favorite for filmmakers willing to shoot in Oregon. Fact number 10. The production restored a fishing cottage at Shevlin Park in lieu of paying filming fees, and a plaque still marks it today. Rooster Cogburn left another lasting legacy when Shevlin Park, located just outside Bend, Oregon, was used for some of the Nitro wagon scenes. The production chose this location partly because the paved roads made it easier to transport the equipment needed for those dangerous sequences. Rather than pay the standard filming fees to the park, the production made a different arrangement. An old fishing cottage in Shevlin Park needed restoration work, and the Rooster Cogburn crew agreed to restore the cottage as payment for using the location. They did the work, restored the cottage, and when they finished, they placed a plaque commemorating the restoration. That plaque is still there today, so you can visit Shevlin Park, find the cottage, and read about how it was restored by the crew of a John Wayne Western. This kind of arrangement benefits everyone, since the park gets a historic building restored at no cost to taxpayers. The production gets a filming location, without cash changing hands, and 50 years later, visitors to the park get a tangible connection to Hollywood history. Small details like this that most people never know about represent the way film productions can leave positive marks on the communities where they work. Fact number 11. Director Stuart Millar's career essentially ended after John Wayne criticized his work on the film. Stuart Millar was chosen to direct the film, but he was primarily known as a producer and had only directed one previous feature film, When the Legends Die in '72. Hiring a relatively inexperienced director for a major Western starring two of the biggest names in Hollywood history was a risk that didn't pay off, according to multiple sources. John Wayne was reportedly deeply disappointed with the final result and didn't hesitate to blame the director. Wayne criticized producer Hal Wallace for selecting Millar, and Wallace apparently agreed with Wayne's assessment. The director's inexperience showed in the pacing, in the action sequences, in the way scenes were blocked and shot. Critics noticed it too. Pauline Kael, the legendary film critic for The New Yorker, wrote that Millar can't seem to find a discreet enough distance for the camera, and Variety called the direction numb and ragged. These weren't just harsh reviews, they were professional obituaries. Stuart Millar's career as a feature film director was essentially over after Rooster Cogburn, and he was relegated to television work with no more major theatrical releases. One high-profile failure can undo years of success in Hollywood. Millar had produced important films, but his reputation as a director was destroyed by this single project. Fact number 12. Rooster Cogburn was Hal Wallace's final film after producing over 400 productions, including Casablanca. While Stuart Millar's career ended with Rooster Cogburn, the film also marked the end of a much more illustrious career when producer Hal Wallace made Rooster Cogburn his swan song. Understanding what this means requires knowing who Hal Wallace was. He'd started at Warner Brothers in 23 and rose to become head of production, and under his watch, Warner Brothers became one of the most important studios in Hollywood. He personally produced or supervised over 400 films during his career. What films? Casablanca for one. Also The Maltese Falcon, Yankee Doodle Dandy, now Voyager, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Little Caesar, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. Later, when he moved to Paramount Pictures, he produced films for Elvis Presley, Dean Martin, and Jerry Lewis, and he produced True Grit, which started this whole thing. Wallace was 82 years old when Rooster Cogburn was released, having produced films for over 50 years, worked with every major star, survived every change in the industry, and left an indelible mark on American cinema. Choosing to end his career with a Western pairing, Wayne and Katharine Hepburn, makes sense, since these were actors from his era representing the kind of filmmaking he understood and loved. Not a masterpiece, but his choice for how to go out. Hal Wallace died in 1986 at age 88, and Rooster Cogburn stands as his final credit, the last film in a legendary career. Fact number 13. Katharine Hepburn compared John Wayne to Spencer Tracy, her longtime love, the highest compliment she could give. Katharine Hepburn's evolving opinion of John Wayne tells us something important about both of them. Earlier we discussed how Hepburn had refused to work with Wayne in the 50s due to political differences, but by the time they actually worked together, she developed profound respect for him, respect that showed in the comparison she made. Hepburn told people that John Wayne projected the same sense of integrity that Spencer Tracy did on the screen. Anyone who knows Hepburn's history understands this is an extraordinary statement, given Spencer Tracy was the love of her life. Their relationship lasted 27 years, from 1941 until his death in '67. They made 9 films together, and he was, by her own account, the finest actor she ever worked with and the most important person in her life. Comparing John Wayne to Spencer Tracy was the highest compliment Hepburn could give, and she wasn't talking about politics anymore, or about whether they agreed on issues. She was talking about something deeper: integrity, authenticity, the quality that makes a great actor great. Hepburn's autobiography, published in '91, described Wayne with genuine warmth and admiration, detailing his physical presence, his confidence, his humor, his skill as an actor. She wrote, "When I leaned against him, which I did as often as possible, I must confess I am reduced to such innocent pleasures, thrilling." 2 actors who should have been enemies, who came from opposite ends of the political spectrum, who represented different visions of America, found common ground in their craft and mutual respect. That's the real story of Rooster Cogburn. Fact number 14. A third Rooster Cogburn film was planned but canceled after the lukewarm reception to the sequel. Rooster Cogburn was supposed to be the second film in a trilogy, and producer Hal Wallace had plans for a third film featuring Wayne as the one-eyed marshal. True Grit had made over $31 million domestically, which was huge for 1969, so a franchise seemed like a smart bet. Wayne had won his Oscar for the role, the character was iconic, and Charles Portis's source material from his novel had proven audiences loved Rooster Cogburn, so why not keep going? The problem was that Rooster Cogburn didn't live up to expectations. Critical reception was mixed at best, with most reviewers praising the stars but savaging the script and direction, and more importantly, the box office was disappointing. The film made money, but nothing close to what True Grit had generated. Wayne himself was disappointed with how the film turned out, expecting better and not being shy about saying so. When Wallace approached him about a third film, Wayne wasn't interested, and without Wayne there was no Rooster Cogburn franchise. Paramount Pictures, the studio that had distributed True Grit, also lost interest and cited Wayne's age. He was pushing 70, and the general decline in audience interest in westerns. The genre that had dominated American cinema for decades was dying, with only 2 westerns finishing in the top 10 at the box office during the entire decade of the 70s. The third Rooster Cogburn film never happened, and the character's story ended in '75, incomplete and somewhat unsatisfying. Wayne would make one more Western, The Shootist in '76, which is generally considered far superior to Rooster Cogburn and a much more fitting end to his career. Fact number 15. The sequel earned only 26% of True Grit's domestic gross, a massive disappointment for Universal Studios. Numbers tell the story of why that third film never happened. True Grit, released in '69, was a phenomenon that grossed over $31 million domestically, which in today's money is roughly $240 million adjusted for inflation, the eighth highest grossing film of 1969. Rooster Cogburn, by contrast, made approximately $8 million domestically, which is only 26% of what the original film had earned. That's the difference between a genuine hit and a moderate performer in Hollywood terms, representing a massive drop-off. The film did make money since $8 million in theatrical grosses meant it was profitable after accounting for the budget and marketing. But profitability isn't the same as success. Universal Studios and Hal Wallace had expected Rooster Cogburn to be a big hit, maybe not as big as True Grit but certainly respectable. Industry publications at the time described the film's performance as a disappointment and noted it was far less popular than True Grit, and the film finished 25th to 27th at the box office for 1975, which sounds decent until you realize True Grit had finished 8th. Wayne was at a point in his career where he didn't need to make films for money, since he was wealthy and semi-retired, and he'd done Rooster Cogburn because he loved the character and wanted to work with Katharine Hepburn. Seeing it receive lukewarm reviews and modest box office had to be frustrating. Fact number 16. Oregon Governor Tom McCall flew in to visit the set in early October 1974. This production was such a big deal for Oregon that the state's governor, Tom McCall, personally flew to the Bend area in early October '74 to visit the set and meet the stars. McCall was an unusual governor, an environmentalist Republican who fought to preserve Oregon's natural beauty and limit development. He'd been instrumental in cleaning up the Willamette River and establishing Oregon's pioneering land use planning system. And he was also media savvy enough to understand the value of associating himself with Hollywood glamour. Having John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn filming in Oregon was a coup for the state, bringing money, jobs, and attention to an area that wasn't typically on Hollywood's radar. Most westerns were shot in California, Arizona, or Utah, and Oregon had the scenery but not the infrastructure. McCall's visit was part publicity stunt, part genuine appreciation for what the production was doing for the local economy, given crew members stayed in local hotels, ate at local restaurants, hired local workers, and the spending impact of a major film production can be significant for a smaller community. The governor's visit also gave Wayne and Hepburn a chance to meet a politician who didn't fit neatly into either of their political boxes, since McCall was a Republican, which Wayne would have appreciated, but also an environmentalist and social moderate, which Hepburn would have respected. Fact number 17. Strother Martin was actually 12 years younger than both Wayne and Hepburn, despite their characters calling him Old Man. Here's an amusing bit of irony from the production. Wayne and Hepburn's characters repeatedly refer to Strother Martin's character as Old Man in the film, and the script treats him as elderly, as someone from an older generation than the main characters. Strother Martin was born in 1919, making him 55 years old during filming, while Wayne and Hepburn were both 67. Martin was 12 years younger than the stars who were calling him an old man. This kind of thing happens in Hollywood all the time since actors play older or younger than their actual age, and the audience suspends disbelief, but it's particularly funny when you know the real ages. The old man was actually young enough to be the child of the actors treating him as their elder. Martin was a wonderful character actor who appeared in dozens of westerns and crime films, probably best remembered for his role in Cool Hand Luke, where he delivered the famous line, "What we've got here is failure to communicate." He brought authenticity and lived in quality to every role, which is why audiences believed him as an old missionary even though he was comparatively young. 1980 brought his death at age 61, far too young, but he left behind a body of work that Western fans still appreciate. Fact number 18. The screenplay was deliberately structured to echo the plot of The African Queen, Katharine Hepburn's 1951 classic with Humphrey Bogart. Martha Heyer, writing under her pseudonym, didn't try to hide what she was doing when she openly structured Rooster Cogburn to remind audiences of two beloved films, Wayne's True Grit and Hepburn's The African Queen. That 1951 film, directed by John Huston, had Hepburn playing Rose Sayer, a missionary's sister in Africa during World War I, whose brother is killed by German soldiers, and she teams up with Charlie Allnut, a gruff, hard-drinking riverboat captain played by Humphrey Bogart. Together they make a dangerous journey down a river transporting explosives to attack a German gunboat, and along the way the mismatched pair fall in love. Rooster Cogburn follows the same pattern. Hepburn plays Eula Goodnight, a minister's daughter whose father is killed by outlaws, and she teams up with Rooster Cogburn, a gruff, hard-drinking marshal played by Wayne. Together they make a dangerous journey down a river transporting nitroglycerin to stop the outlaws, and along the way the mismatched pair develop romantic feelings. The structure is nearly identical, with both films even featuring whitewater rapids as key action sequences. The African Queen had been a huge hit, earning Humphrey Bogart his only Oscar and getting nominated for Best Picture, so why not use a proven formula? Critics noticed this immediately. Roger Ebert, in his one-star review, complained that watching Rooster Cogburn meant we've got to watch the actors themselves conspire in a ripoff of some of their finest moments, and Rotten Tomatoes later explicitly noted that Hollywood liked The African Queen so much that it remade it in 1975 as Rooster Cogburn. The filmmakers weren't trying to fool anyone, counting instead on nostalgia and on audiences enjoying the familiar beats played by different stars in a different setting, a calculated gamble that didn't quite pay off. Fact number 19. The damaged heart valve from Wayne's coughing fit went undiagnosed until his emergency open heart surgery in '78. Wayne's health problems during production run deeper than we discussed earlier. That coughing fit he'd experienced in early '74 while fighting pneumonia during the filming of Brannigan did more damage than anyone realized at the time. The severe coughing had damaged one of Wayne's heart valves, but heart valve damage doesn't always show symptoms immediately, especially in someone who's already dealing with reduced lung capacity and other health issues. Wayne felt weak, felt tired, struggled to breathe, yet he attributed all of that to having one lung and being 67 years old. The damaged valve wasn't discovered until April 1978, when Wayne was hospitalized at Massachusetts General Hospital for what was supposed to be a routine checkup, and the doctors found the problem and immediately performed open-heart surgery to replace the valve. Wayne was filming Rooster Cogburn, riding horses and performing action scenes, and struggling with the altitude in the Deschutes National Forest, all with a damaged heart valve, while being in worse shape than even he knew. The '78 surgery was successful, and Wayne recovered, but less than a year later during Christmas '78, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. That cancer would kill him on June 11, 1979, when he was 72 years old. Looking back at Rooster Cogburn, knowing what we know now about Wayne's health, it's remarkable he made it through the production at all, and it's a testament to his toughness, his professionalism, and his stubborn refusal to quit. Fact number 20. Katharine Hepburn refused to use a stunt double despite having recently undergone hip surgery. Hepburn's determination matched Wayne's stubbornness pound for pound. She had recently undergone hip surgery before production began, and at 67, recovering from major surgery, most actresses would have been happy to let a stunt double handle the riding scenes. Not Katharine Hepburn. The production had hired a skilled stunt rider to double for Hepburn in any difficult sequences, but according to Turner Classic Movies, Hepburn looked at the stunt rider and said, "She doesn't sit as straight in the saddle as I do." That was that. Hepburn insisted on doing her own riding since she'd waited her entire career to make a Western with John Wayne, and she wasn't about to give up a single moment of it to someone else. She reportedly declared, "I haven't waited all these years to do a cowboy picture with Wayne to give up a single moment of it now." You're watching a 67-year-old woman fresh from hip surgery, riding horses through the Oregon wilderness, performing alongside a 67-year-old man with one lung and a damaged heart valve, and the fact that both of them survived the production is something of a miracle. That determination, that refusal to accept limitations, that insistence on doing the work themselves, that's what made them legends. That's why we're still talking about them 50 years later. Rooster Cogburn was supposed to be a sure thing with two legends, an Oscar-winning character, a proven producer, beautiful locations, and a script that echoed beloved classics. Everything was in place for a triumph. The film became something more complicated, and in its own way, more interesting instead. A document of two aging stars refusing to slow down, of political opposites finding common ground, of a genre breathing its last breaths. A film marked by health crises, behind-the-scenes drama, and the bittersweet reality of watching icons acknowledge their mortality while refusing to surrender to it. The 20 hidden facts we've explored reveal a production that was far more dramatic behind the camera than anything that made it to the screen. A secret screenwriter, surviving movie sets you can still visit, the end of two legendary careers, Wallace and Millar, and the near end of two others, political evolution and personal respect transcending old grudges. Watch Rooster Cogburn today, Whether you're discovering it for the first time or rediscovering it after the Coen brothers' 2010 True Grit remake. And you're not just watching a Western, you're watching John Wayne and Katharine Hepburn saying goodbye to an era, to a kind of filmmaking, to the prime of their careers, and they're doing it with dignity, with humor, with the professionalism that defined their entire lives in film. The movie itself might not be a masterpiece, and critics were right that the script is derivative and the direction is lacking, but the presence of Wayne and Hepburn elevates every scene therein. You can see the genuine affection between them, the mutual respect, the chemistry that transcends the weak material. You can see two people who refused to quit, who pushed through pain and limitation and doubt to do what they loved one more time. That's the real story of Rooster Cogburn, not the plot, not the action scenes, not the box office numbers. The story is two legends, both 67 years old, both dealing with serious health problems, both at the end of their careers, choosing to work together despite everything that should have kept them apart. They made their only film together in 1975, and while it wasn't perfect, it was real. If you love classic westerns and the golden age of Hollywood, make sure to like this video, leave a comment sharing your memories of Rooster Cogburn, or your favorite John Wayne or Katharine Hepburn films, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden stories behind the movies that defined a generation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.